Hello and welcome. I am live from Pellam's Wasteland, and today I have another episode of Pellam's Wasteland Reads for you all, this time covering two books. One, Michael Moorcock's Elric at the End of Time, and the other, Peter S. Beagle's I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons. And I have read a fair bit of Michael Moorcock over the course of a reading career, including a number of things this year, which is fun. But I haven't read any other Peter S. Beagle. I know his his most famous book is The Last Unicorn, which I know was also adapted into an animated movie, which I also haven't seen. So not going to be able to talk about The Last Unicorn, but I can talk about these two books that I read. And yeah, I thought they were both pretty good. I think I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons is more my speed because Elric at the End of Time does not actually have that much Elric in it. And the parts with Elric in it are pretty good, and the other parts are definitely um, broadly not as good. So there's a collection of things in this particular collection. There are two Elric short stories. One of them is longer than the other. One of them is pretty short story. And then there's some nonfiction kind of about Moorcock writing about his own stuff. And then the biggest chunk is the Sojan the Swordsman stories, and then a little more nonfiction about Jerry Cornelius and sort of about him writing for the new wave sci-fi stuff, and then one little fiction bit at the end that's only, I don't know, like 2 or 3 pages long. So you end up with a book called Elric at the End of Time, where Elric at the End of Time is one of the stories, but Elric is not the protagonist with the most uh, total kind of pages allocated to his stories in this particular collection, which is fine. It's not the end of the world, or it I guess I would say the Sojan stuff is mostly not that good. It is really it's from very early in Michael Moorcock's career, and it definitely reads like it. It is pulpy, but definitely getting into the the sort of pastiche territory of being kind of ridiculous and silly, as much as it is actually kind of fun and exciting. Although I will say, there are definitely moments in the Sojan stories that I liked a lot. Bits and pieces of clearly what Moorcock would kind of end up coming to really have as central elements of his work. But it's really early stories that are just really not as good, as compelling as a lot of his later stuff that is better, which is fine. Most authors go through something like that, especially with their early stuff. Plenty of authors who have written good books early on or bad books early on, but go on to write good books or anything like that. I think about, I read Soldier's Pay by William Faulkner, which is fine. It's not great, and there's no real like reason to read it if you haven't read The Sound and the Fury or Absalom, Absalom, or As I Lie Dying, or even like I really love The Bear, which is a kind of short story novella by Faulkner that is really good. Um, but you can sort of get a sense that this is a guy who knows a bit about writing and is probably going to write better things going on, even though this is really not a masterwork of the craft like some of the later stuff is. um, and the Sojan stuff, I think, is kind of like that, in that you can tell that Moorcock is a writer who loves all this pulpy stuff, and is um, interested in some of the kind of thematic stuff that will get explored more thoroughly later, but it's just not that good, which is is fine. The other stuff in this collection is mostly pretty good. The two Elric stories, I would say, are pretty good. One of them is a fun and weird version of Elric, where he is transported to the end of time and is they're trying to bring him back to his own dimension and all that sort of stuff. So there's this dimension hopping element where he believes that these technologically empowered beings at the end of time are his familiar chaos lords and all that sort of stuff. And so that's fun, the kind of multiple perspectives. And there's a great a great sequence. One of the characters is kind of this or attempts to present himself as this kind of gloomy romantic, and he and Elric have a sort of uh, gloomy, depressed, nihilistic romantic off between the two of them, competing for how they have suffered and how they are despairing and all that sort of stuff. And it's really funny and great. Um, yeah, so Elric at the end of time, the actual story is pretty good. The Last Enchantment is also pretty good. Kind of a similar concept of Elric gets transported to another place and has to figure out what he's going to do about not being at home. The nonfiction I quite liked. I think Michael Moorcock is pretty good about writing about his own work and his own kind of desires, and sort of talking about the sort of broader cultural milieu that all of the things that he is interested in took place in, and talk about, like, other publications, often kind of comparing like American with British publications and all that sort of stuff. So that stuff is fun. It's too bad that of 220 pages of book, 100 of this is Sojan the Swordsman stuff that is just not that good. But oh well, that's fine, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, the other book that I wanted to talk about is I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons by Peter S. Beagle, where we follow a dragon exterminator. Most dragons, it turns out, are very small. They're sort of like cats, but that they breed like rodents if left untended. And so our fearless exterminator Robert Thrax, who has a real name that is much longer and grander, and that nobody except his mom is allowed to call him, Gaius Aurelius Constantine Heliogabalus. Um, Everybody else calls him Robert. Is this exterminator dealing with dragons, but he doesn't want to be a dragon exterminator. It's a very kind of classic fantasy concept of this young, capable, but not too capable character who is feels stifled at home, living in this lifestyle that he is born into, taking over dragon exterminating from his dad, and he's got to provide for the family because his dad has died, and so he's the oldest son, so he's got to kind of shoulder those responsibilities and all of that. And there's a very, very classic kind of farm boy aspect to all of that. And then the other principal characters, there's the princess Cerise, who is also great. She's, I suppose, a little bit of a tomboy and is incredibly beautiful and totally uninterested in most of her suitors, who all think she is beautiful and wonderful and are kind of dumb as rocks. And then there's Crown Prince Reginald, who it turns out is kind of dumb as rocks, but he turns out to have a real kind of heart of gold down under there, and is, trying to woo the Princess Cerise. And there's a not really a love triangle, but there's a sort of romance going on between these characters, and then some of Robert's friends, and some of the other, the stuff going on in the kingdom, and Crown Prince Reginald's dad, King Krije, who is this kind of great big, over the top heroic character. He's sort of like Conan or something. This kind of huge and violent father figure who is a great hero of the past, but is disappointed in his son and all that sort of stuff. And it's a lot of kind of classic, sort of very, very familiar sort of fantasy concepts done in fun, humorous and clever and very comforting ways. I think that was the specific list that recommended this book was talking about kind of cozy reads, and I would say this is definitely a cozy read. There's definitely some fantasy action and some stakes, but overall, it is really fun and cozy story about these mostly likable characters doing um, things that they're trying to do right by their difficult circumstances and all of that sort of stuff. And I say that at the same time, there is at least one, and maybe depending on how you feel, more sequences that are really stark and really a real eye opener in this kind of cozy fantasy story. And I think that's part of why I like this one so much, is that there are these very very cozy fun moments, but then there are also real moments of serious tension, moments of kind of unexpected levels of violence that come to be meaningful to the characters as they try to work through what's happened to them, all that sort of stuff. It really adds a lot. It reminds me a lot of why I like, say, T.H. White's The Once and Future King so much, is a story that has a lot of these kind of cozy, lovable elements, and then also has really striking and not cozy moments that become really important to the story and that are part of kind of wrestling with the sum total of the book involves trying to come to terms with both of those things. So yeah, I liked I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons quite a bit. I thought it was really, really fun. I had not been feeling so hot, been a little sick, and read this and felt a lot better reading this because it was nice and fun and a fantasy story with silliness and heart, and also dragons, which is fun too. The dragons in this story are great, and they're also fun and lovable and a great kind of part of this particular tale. So yeah, between the two of these, I guess I would recommend I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons a little more than Elric at the End of Time, just because so much of the Elric book is not really Elric. Um, like I said, which is not necessarily that bad, but is a little bit like, well, if I wanted to read a bunch of Moorcock that's not Elric, I have other Moorcock that's not Elric that is also pretty good, unlike Sojan the Swordsman, that is not quite as good as some of the other not Elric things. So, anyway, but I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons, fun and silly and totally worth checking out if a cozy fantasy story with a lot of these kind of twists on the kind of classic fantasy concepts sounds like fun to you. But that is going to be it for me for today. So if you have read either of these, have opinions on them, have been inspired to read them, and just want to say that, feel free to leave a comment down below. Otherwise, I've been live from Hell's Wasteland, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.